Live from the Broadcast Center in Los Angeles, this is KCAL9 News at 8.
Now at 8, President Trump in L.A. Downtown is on lockdown and protesters are out. We're live.
Stacking sandbags and getting ready for more rain. We'll visit burn areas to see how people are handling the wet weather. Hello, I'm Suzanne Marquez.
And I'm Elsa Ramon. Mr. Trump's visit garnered a big response from people both for and against the president.
KCAL9's Tom Wade is live in Beverly Hills with more on the rallies that happened today. Tom?
Hi, Suzanne and Elsa. Yeah, right now we still have a bit of a crowd here in Beverly Gardens Park. You can see there's a crowd forming alongside of the road on Santa Monica Boulevard here, kind of trying to get the drivers into the mix. Take a listen to some protesters just a little while ago.
And he's never read a book. Donald Trump is a crook.
So there you have it. A lot of folks gathering here in this park. I'd say a few hundred, possibly more, maybe 1,000 at its peak. There was an anti-Trump rally, a pro-Trump rally scheduled just down the block, a few blocks away. It did not materialize. So a lot of those folks came over here, kind of mixed it up a little bit, had some discussions with people. Nobody really got into any kind of fights that we could tell. Everything peaceful here. But people just wanting to make their voices heard. Those against Trump saying he does not share Californians' values, and those for Trump say he is going to, of course, make the country and by the state also better because he is the leader. Take a listen to what some of the folks here who came out had to say.
He hasn't even completed anything that he's really set out to do, and he's already trying to campaign and get money for the next time around. He's not doing anything of purpose, and he's only causing chaos.
It just makes me really sad that he's here because in California we're united. We stand together.
I was just down at the border wall and got to see him, the motorcade come through. We had a rally down there of 1,000 people in support of the wall and in support of Donald Trump coming to California.
I love Trump. I want to make sure that he knows that the Latino community is behind him 100%. We have more than 5,000 members just here in Los Angeles, but people are not vocal about it because they're scared.
And back here live at Beverly Gardens Park, there's still a fair number of people here trying to make their voices heard, both for and against, but definitely a much larger anti-Trump crowd here as the night progresses. We'll, of course, be staying here and monitoring the situation for you and have more on CBS 2 News at 11 and KCAL9 at 10. Reporting live, I'm Tom Wade. Let's go back to you in the studio.
All right, Tom, we'll check back with you then. In the meantime, President Trump has had a whirlwind day in Southern California. His visit started at the border and is winding up at a multi-million-dollar fundraiser in Beverly Hills tonight.
His entourage will spend the night in a hotel in downtown L.A. KCAL9's Jeff Nguyen is live with the latest. Jeff.
Guys, we are at the corner of 7th and Figueroa right now. A much smaller crowd than what we were seeing in Beverly Hills, where Tom Wade is reporting. I'm going to ask Robert Pastoriza to turn around. You can see a number of the signs out here right now. A much smaller crowd. Folks are chanting out here. The other part that we want to show you, Robert, is if you can see, show some of the hard closures in downtown right now outside the Intercontinental Hotel, where sources tell us this is where the president will spend the night. A lot of the folks here have been taking issue with some of the policies from the 45th president of the United States. One of the things that they have not been happy about is the long promised but not yet delivered border wall. Take a listen to what some of the folks here are telling us.
We heard he was coming to San Diego to promote the border wall and that he was coming up here for a fundraiser. And when I heard that there was going to be all this police activity and the street closures, I was pretty upset because I think it's a waste of taxpayer dollars.
We heard that Trump was going to be here, and we're very upset about that. We don't believe that he's welcome here. We don't want him here, and so I just wanted to come here and show that.
What are some of the issues with which you take exception?
For me, especially, definitely immigration reform. The fact that he's not for it, he's not really willing to move forward with that at all. The fact that he wants to build a wall is going to cost us $25 billion. Out of all the things that we can do to improve this country, to build a wall for $25 billion, wasting all that money into that, it's ridiculous to me.
Now, to be fair, there are some Trump supporters here, but they are in the minority here. You can see some of the black and whites that are outside the Intercontinental right now. In recent days, LAPD went through this area and they removed a number of the homeless encampments out here. The reason for that is because there are a number of tents where homeless people were living, and so for security reasons, they asked a lot of those people to move. We are told about 25 people moved from those encampments. There were no arrests made. Everyone cooperated. Now, we should tell you, even though there is a demonstration here, there has not been a permit. So LAPD wants to make sure that people are able to exercise their First Amendment rights. What they have done, I'm going to ask Robert Pastoriza to turn around, is basically declare that side of the street, that corner right by the Bank of America, the spot where people can exercise and demonstrate. And so right now, they are there. Chances are when the motorcade goes by, those folks are not going to be able to see the motorcade. The LAPD is not telling us which direction the motorcade will end up going, but as you can hear from those sound bites previously, a number of people out here not very happy with the 45th president of the United States, and so they've been chanting out here. Most of them got here about 10-15 minutes ago, so we will stay on top of this, and if anything changes, we will check in with you. But for now, let's send it back to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Here are the streets closed as a result of the president's visit. They'll be in effect until 1 tomorrow afternoon. Figueroa Street between 6th and 8th Streets, Wilshire Boulevard between Flower Street and Beaudry Avenue, 7th Street between Flower and Bixel Streets, and the 7th Street and Fig entrance to the metro station will be closed for the rest of the day.
The president didn't make too many friends on the 405 in West LA today. This is video of his motorcade passing through Santa Monica. The CHP used rolling closures, giving the president all of the northbound lanes on the way to Beverly Hills. Damon Perry posted this photo on Instagram. It shows bumper-to-bumper traffic trying to get on the freeway. Perry's caption said, quote, "The commander in tweet is in town. Great job blocking the intersection in the rain at rush hour." Ooh, that is the worst time. He's right.
And tonight, the president is at a fundraiser at a home in Beverly Hills.
His supporters paid big bucks to be there, too. KCAL9's Crystal Cruz has more.
This is a very exclusive neighborhood with multi-million-dollar homes. We've seen Rolls Royces and Bentleys heading into the gated community where the president is holding his fundraiser. President Donald Trump is here raising millions of dollars for his party. Tickets reportedly start at $35,000 for dinner, $50,000 for a couple, $100,000 to take a photo with Trump, and up to $250,000 for a sit-down with the commander-in-chief. 90 people said to be attending the fundraiser at the home of a very wealthy man, Edward Glazer, who's the co-chairman of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Outside of the gated community, we found two people with a flag and a sign that read "Latinas for Trump," hoping to wave hello to the president as he drove into the gated community and praise him for the good job they say he's doing.
I love President Trump because he's for law and order, and I'm a Latina for Trump, and my mom is from Mexico and came here through the immigration process with her family, waited many years to come to the United States with papers, and I love President Trump because he's for law and order.
And that woman took the day off to be here, and she says if she had $250,000 and she was invited, she'd definitely be inside at that fundraiser. I'm Crystal Cruz in Beverly Hills, KCAL9 News.
The president was in San Diego earlier today to look at prototypes for a border wall. KCAL9's Michelle Gili has more on that visit.
Protesters against President Trump shouted down a lone supporter at the San Ysidro border crossing before Mr. Trump's morning tour of the border wall prototypes.
This is totally unfair that all these illegal alien immigrants, advocates, they're just making all this noise and accusing President of being a racist, which is untrue.
Nearby in Otay Mesa, around 300 pro-Trump demonstrators set up shop in a vacant lot near the international airport. They called themselves the Welcome Party. Young and old wore red, white, and blue, carried signs and waved flags. People drove down from Pasadena, Riverside, and Los Angeles to celebrate the president's arrival in California.
I just wanted to see Trump and support less taxes in California, following the Constitution, That's really important to me.
The country right now is going through a lot of dire straits right now, and but we feel that he's actually fulfilling what he promised he would do, and that's what we're here to stand. We're here for.
At the border near the display, there was a big law enforcement presence. A small group, both for and against the president, came early.
So it doesn't make any sense to me, because desperate people that want to really come to work are not going to let that wall stop them. It didn't stop me.
It is possible to work together, but I feel that Donald Trump is only about himself, and he's not cooperating with anyone else.
The crowd of demonstrators grew to a few hundred by the time the motorcade passed by. The scene was peaceful. After looking at 8 different wall displays, Mr. Trump used part of his time in San Diego to attack Governor Jerry Brown.
Well, I think Governor Brown's done a very poor job running California. They have the highest taxes in the United States. The place is totally out of control. You have sanctuary cities where you have criminals living in the sanctuary cities.
Governor Brown sent out a tweet of his own. Thanks for the shout out at Real Donald Trump, Brown wrote. But bridges are still better than walls, and California remains the 6th largest economy in the world and the most prosperous state in America. In Otay Mesa, I'm Michelle Geely, KCAL9 News.
President Trump's visit to the Southland. Stay with KCAL9 News and KCAL9.com for live continuing team coverage.
President Trump started the day with a tweet saying he had fired Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. The abrupt move ends the turbulent tenure of the man who has reportedly called the president a moron. President Trump nominated CIA Chief Mike Pompeo to be the new Secretary of State. Tillerson's departure is just the latest in a number of high-profile administration departures from the White House inner circle.
We disagreed on things. When you look at the Iran deal, I think it's terrible. I guess he thought it was okay.
What is most important is to ensure an orderly and smooth transition during a time that the country continues to face significant policy and national security challenges.
Mike Pompeo still needs Senate approval to start as Secretary of State. Republicans are eager to get the process moving. Many Democrats say he's too partisan for the job. The president has nominated Pompeo's deputy, Gina Haspel, to lead the CIA.
Well, moving now to our weather. Sunshine sure did not greet Mr. President on his trip to L.A.
And the rain's not over yet, right, Evelyn?
That's right. Susanna Nell says we get a look outside right now. We're drying out, but not for long. Rain on the way yet again. We'll have your forecast when we come back.
I'm Jo Kwan in Burbank on Country Club Drive, where this happened the last time there was heavy rain. We're talking to some locals coming up on how they're preparing for the upcoming storm.
A terrifying crash for some high school students. Their bus plunged down a ravine on the way back from a school trip to Disney.
But first, here's a look at the best of L.A. and Orange County tonight on KCAL9.com, where we are always on. KCAL9 News at 8. We'll be right back.